One knife to rule them all, one knife to find them, one knife to bring them all, and in the darkness. Okay, maybe only that first line made any sense in this situation, but have I found my one knife on my big martial knife exploration journey? I'm not sure yet, but let's go ahead and talk about the Cold Steel Recon Scout in CPM 3V. Little background for context. As I've been on my big martial knife exploration journey, we've looked at a lot of sizable cold steel products, and I've been getting a lot of recommendations for the Trailmaster and a little bit less so for the Recon Scout. And then I started getting a lot more of those recommendations after my, shall we say, disappointing experience with the cheap version of the Laredo. A lot of people said I should have, went ahead and spent the money and gotten the 3V version, but concerns about that. Well, Cable Tang, again, lots and lots of recommendations for the Trailmaster and its little brother, the Recon Scout. Now, the only significant difference between the Trailmaster and the Recon Scout, as far as I can tell, is blade length. About 1.5 inches difference in blade. So given the price, which we'll talk about in a bit, of both of those knives in 3V on the current market, I had to make a choice. Should I get the Trailmaster or should I get the Recon Scout? And I decided, as a birthday present to myself, to go ahead and choose the Recon Scout because I felt like the somewhat shorter length would make it a better all-around both martial and utility knives. So we're definitely going to talk about that. But let's talk about that edge. Okay, CPM 3V. My test files are saying this is somewhere above 60 HRC. It is a flat ground blade that is tapering from a 7mm thick spine. And yes, that back edge is sharpened. It's more of a chopping edge, not a super slicing edge. Speaking of super slicey, shaving sharp out of the box, yeah, there is a very fine secondary edge bevel on there. Shaving sharp out of the box, mostly, not the shavingest knife I've ever had, but we're going to see how it's done in testing so far. I've also been using it as a utility knife and doing food prep with it. We'll talk about that. But out of the box sharpness otherwise. Against paper, yeah, it's pretty much as expected. Very slicey. Okay, that was me. We'll do it slow. And yeah, against some cardboard. It's a bit broad, but yeah, I'm going to say pretty slicey. So let's talk about specs. So is this the bestest fixed blade knife ever, especially within the boundaries of my particular budget? Well, we'll get to my conclusions on that. But first, as usual, let's talk about fit, finish, build quality specifications. The sheath, I don't have much at all to say about. This one came with another standard Secure-X sheath, which has a couple of benefits and some drawbacks, concerns. Will that material diminish the edge of this blade over time? I don't know yet. So far not, but yeah, that's a concern. I probably will get or make a nicer sheath for this because I do believe it deserves it. Speaking of deserving it, all right. Fit, finish, build quality. I'm going to say excellent, especially if I'm using the cheap version of the Laredo as a benchmark. And I was extremely critical of that knife, more so than it probably deserved. But one of the things I did complain about was how coarsely finished the blade was. It looked like they gave up after the 80 grit sanding belt. And this blade does have some of that satin brushed finish, but it's so much better done. Smooth, and yeah, the lines are extremely crisp and clean to the point that, yeah, that back spine has sharp corners. You could use that for scraping or striking a ferro rod. And yeah, I mentioned back edge swedge. It's chopping sharp. Barely any visible gap between the blade and the guard. Now I did very slightly dehorn the guard. Didn't have to do that too much. That was just for my own comfort in handling, because yeah, in handling we'll talk about how I like to get my fingers and thumb around that guard. Now this version comes with the Kraton grip. Now they describe it as being full tang, but obviously it's not visible all the way around. Some people have broken these knives down, cut them apart, and discovered what I would refer to as a really robust stick tang that is almost full width and full length. I do not expect this will fail on me, but if it ever does, there'll be an update, definitely. Has a hole with a brass grommet for a lanyard. We'll talk about how it feels in handling. But specifications, all right, these are pricey knives. I tend to see the Trailmaster and the Recon Scout run for often around $300 US on the current market, maybe a little bit less. Best deal I found on this one, Chicago Knife Works, as usual. I'll put the link down in the description. I paid about $230 US for this. So I feel like I got a pretty good deal. Do I feel like I got my money's worth? We'll get to that. But otherwise, the biggest difference, as mentioned, between the Recon Scout and the Trailmaster is about 1.5 inches of blade. They describe this as having a 7.5 inch blade. I'm measuring full length as 7 5/8 inches. So 19.5 centimeters. It is 1.5 inches wide front to back, 4 centimeters, and as mentioned, a full 7 millimeters thick at the spine. Now grip, since I don't have a stopping spot, I'm measuring full length at 5 inches, 12.5 centimeters, giving the knife an overall length of 12 3/4 inches, about 32.25 centimeters. Weight, it's got some heft to it without being unwieldy at 14.7 ounces, 416 grams. Point of balance is just right there in front of the guard. So we're definitely going to talk about how this feels, how it performs. Frankly, I'm not sure what kind of tests would adequately show you how this knife is built and what it can do. But I have been using it, as I've mentioned, for a variety of utility tasks, including food prep. Now, CPM 3V is not corrosion resistant, but so far it hasn't stained on me, even though it's gotten wet doing stuff. So let me go ahead and roll in my usual test footage. We'll talk about how it did, and then we'll get to my handling impressions. All right, full disclosure. There's been a time jump, a significant time jump. It has been 4 months since I filmed the clip that was right before the test footage. What happened? I'm going to say it was me and not the knife. I don't know what's wrong with me. The knife is, it's a good knife. It's a great knife. It's a fine knife. I'm going to rack this up to the same issue I have with my Beckers, that they're great tools. They're great knives. They're awesome. They're durable. They're well made. But for whatever reason, I'm just not getting the thrill. And okay, in some of my tests, it didn't do as well as I expected it would. And maybe that rolled into it. Also, you know, training with it martially. I don't know. Something just kind of distracted me. And I set it aside and sort of forgot about it. And decided I better go ahead and get this review done while I was evaluating another fixed blade knife, and that gave me a good opportunity to repeat my tests alongside another knife, which I'll be reviewing in a different video, to see if I still felt, well, as blasé about it. Kind of like it is the bestest knife, but it's like saying it's the bestest vanilla knife. I don't know, whatever it is, it's just not... It's not doing that magic for me, and it should. It absolutely should. So let's talk about those test results. Stabbing and thrusting into my pal. Stab him, multiple layers of thick cardboard backed up by a couple of inches of compressed brown paper backed up by wood. It did fantastic. Performed like any other sizable buoy that I tested. Penetration, excellent. Channel into the target media, excellent. Comfort in hand, forward reverse grip, also with the blade rotated in both orientations, away from me and towards me. Yeah, no slippage, no uncomfortable collisions with the guard. Now, yes, I did take the opportunity to just round off the sharpish corners on the guard just a little bit, but my hand didn't really run into them, so it wasn't an issue that way. It was more of an issue when I was, you know, choking up on it like this. I was feeling it. So yeah, performed great, felt great. No problem, right? Okay, next test. The bamboo test. Potentially intentionally abusive, hacking and slashing in the forward and reverse grip at different angles into a piece of hard bamboo to see if I can induce a chip or a roll on a fragile edge. And as expected, yeah, this knife laughed at that test like most cold steel knives do. Didn't take any damage, any diminishment, really chewed up that hard media and felt good doing it. These, again, are not extensive bushcrafting tests. I've just basically put together this battery of tests to give me a sense of how the edge holds up, how the build holds up, and how it translates impact and pressure back into my delicate hands. Yeah, very positive, comfortable grip under impact. Then it was on to carving and chopping wood. Now, I had done food prep with it, worked great for that. Cardboard cutting. Okay, there's something about the profile of this blade that it's not necessarily the best at cutting up really thick cardboard. I'm getting some resistance there. And maybe that came up a little bit in the next tests. But okay, I'm using a softer redwood and a harder whitewood. And in carving, shaving, curling, yeah, great tool. Yeah, the edge, the comfort in the grip, the leverage I'm getting out of it, yeah, great field tool. But then the chopping. All right, round one, I was stunningly disappointed. It wasn't biting in as deeply as I thought it should, especially compared to some of the other knives I've tested. Given the size, the weight, the balance, the geometry of this blade, I expected it to really just completely chew apart those boards, and it didn't. It kind of squished them in certain ways more than it chopped. Now, when I repeated the tests more recently, I think I figured out the magic. It does chop much better if I choke all the way down, using the flare of the grip to get that extra impetus in the blade. Yeah, it became a much better chopper then than trying to do it up here. think I was way too close to the point of balance, which is right there at the top of my hand. So yeah, wasn't getting as much as I could have out of the blade. Once I choked down, was doing better. And that made me think, okay, well, what about the Trailmaster that has a longer blade? Would that perform better than this? Which then, okay, I tried some batoning, and I just couldn't make it work. And I think some of it was the geometry of the blade, but a lot of it was this side of the blade, that I've got lots of sharp, which I could actually use to do some carving and scraping and stuff like that with. So it's actually a very useful edge. Can even do a little scraping with the edges on the spine. But when I was trying to hit with a baton, it would just chew up the baton and not go into the wood. Which again makes me wonder how the longer Trailmaster would perform. It may just not be made for that. Any knife that's got a big old sharpened back swedge is probably not designed for batoning with, so I shouldn't judge it on that. But it felt just fine doing that. No damage, held together. Yeah, just as expected. It's an incredibly durable and comfortable knife. So I don't know what's wrong with me. It's not you, it's me. Did that sound sincere? All right, there is, martially speaking, nothing wrong with this knife. And it has that ideal balance for me of its martial potential and its utility field usefulness. Is it worth what I paid for it? I'm going to say yes. For the quality, durability, and again, all-around potential usefulness, yeah, I think it's worth the price, and it's making me think about getting the Trailmaster. All right, what's right with it, martially speaking? Well, just like any other Bowie-style blade of this size, has all those features and functions for me. Plus, well, maybe a bit more than some of the other knives we've looked at in certain ways. What am I talking about? All right, starting in the forward grip. That grip, very, very comfortable. Yes, I can choke up and lock my index finger and thumb on there for close work. But yeah, just in the standard mid grip, hammer grip, handshake grip, or rocking it between the two for doing snap cutting, yeah, that feels great. Great retention, comfort, and yeah, no uncomfortable kickback under impact. So that's all good. So I feel like I've got that belly to do the slashes and the hewing cuts and the action, the nimbleness, the responsiveness with the point of balance to do the snap cuts, and it's got mass in the blade to really put authority behind those actions. Tip geometry on target for thrusting and stabbing, yeah, awesome performance and great security in hand. Also then have the option of reversing the blade towards me North American Bowie style, which gives me that tip geometry and cutting action in stabbing, and also the ability in striking with it to really bite with that tip angle. No, it's not a swept back kind of hook and clip point, but yeah, that certainly would bite into a target if I did that, especially with the benefit of that sharpened back swedge. Speaking of sharpened back swedge, yes, blade facing away from me, I could use it for the back cutting. And I feel like for the knife of this size, it has a lot of authority for me to strike with the flat or the spine, especially with those sharp corners on the spine. That could be damaging in itself. Now, is it long enough to parry with? I tend to favor something at least 9 inches or something like that, so I feel like this might be a little short for that, though you might be able to use it in a pinch. But I'm thinking countercutting, counter thrusting, pairing it with, you know, something else in my other hand, or using more evasive tactics. Yeah, this would be a great martial tool or companion for another martial tool or improvised shield. What about reverse grip? I'm going to talk about transitions. The grip shape actually is really nice for pinch flipping, even with my stubby fingers, and that grommet is just, it's a great tactile indexing point, that and the flare. at the bottom of the grip. So transitions are nice and grippy. I don't feel like this is going to slip out of my fingers. So I'm getting minimal snag and resistance on the corners as they pass through the palm of my hand doing that. Yeah, that's all good. I have no complaints. Again, I don't know what I have against this knife. Feels great in hand, moves great in hand, transitions great. Yes, I can do the safe, sane thing and transition it with two hands, or yeah, you know what I do if you follow my channel. Can I finger twirl it? Absolutely, yeah. It's a little thick, a little heavy, but the grippiness of the rubber, definitely grabbing my fingers back. Now, I don't recommend doing this because it's not safe or secure. It's just an old habit of mine. And one of the benefits of that habit is it keeps the blade always facing the same direction. So it settles automatically into a grip with the edge facing away from me. And in this grip, also all awesome. I've got good belly for slashing with. And as I've mentioned in other videos, I don't really prefer a lot of length in the reverse grip as compared to something shorter that I feel like I have good leverage and control over. This is a great length for me for that. So yeah, should be, again, loving this knife and the way it's moving for me and performing. And of course, tip on target in stabbing. Really making impressive holes in my target media. You've got some cutting action going backwards with that back edge, or yeah, could absolutely reverse the edge facing towards me. Perfectly functional that way. And I've got some pommel for striking with. It's an impact tool, nice and solid. It doesn't have any, extended metal kind of glass breaking effect, but it's a solid impact device if you needed to use it like that. Don't really have enough guard to necessarily punch with, but yeah, all around, martially for me, this checks pretty much every box. So, all right, I think I just need to spend more time with it. I got distracted with some fancy Spanish and German blades and knives that had a little bit more aesthetic appeal and bling. Again, I feel like I might have that Becker effect, where it's a great knife, but it's not a glamorous knife, and that might be why I don't pick it up and use it as much as I should. So I really feel like I need to give this, well, more of a shot in my rotation. And yeah, I probably need to pick up the Trailmaster. But until that potential to be continued, if you have this knife, other variations of this knife and other steels, I hear those are awesome too. Let's get our conversation going. Otherwise, as always, thank you all so much for watching, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, following my journey, putting up with my madness and my questionable judgment in this case. And I hope to see you all back for, well, whatever we're going to take a look at next.